Friends of the light, I welcome you to a fresh edition of Law and You, which takes our time to look at the nitty-gritty about the law and its functionality, how it applies to the integrated units of the society, and how we can deepen the knowledge of the citizenry. My name is Philip Omogyupo, and joining me on this very sensitive topic, the rule of law, is a senior pastor of Mega Grace Chapel and also a custodian of the law, a legal practitioner, Reverend Joseph Alego. Thanks for joining me, Joseph.
You're welcome, viewers. Thank you very much, Mr. Philip. And welcome to 2023. And I believe that the best shall be for us and Nigerians in general.
Amen.
You're welcome.
Let's look at the issue of the rule of law, like I said earlier. Now, the rule of law happens to be applied in different polities, and we can see how robust it comes about in terms of the result it brings. Now, we start with the inalienable rights of the human beings and, of course, the citizenry. How do you see its application, looking at the Nigerian narrative?
Of course, we need to have a basic understanding of what the rule of law is, generally.
Okay.
You know, it stands on the plank of four principles, basically. That is accountability, that all public and private institutions and individuals should be accountable, should be held accountable before the law. And it also rides on the principle of just law, in that the laws should be known. There should be, it should not be hidden laws. They should be known, as in it should be clear to people what the laws are. And then we talk about whether they are property laws, contractual laws, procedural laws, or laws of any kind, even human rights. They should be known to persons. And then we talk about what? Open government, by the method by which the law comes to being, as in the adoptions or the promulgations should be known, and then the method by which they are enforced or administered should be known, and the method by which they are adjudicated upon should be known. So when we talk about open government, we're also talking about one of the planks on which the principle or the principle of the rule of law rests upon.
Okay.
And then we talk about what? Impartial and accessible justice. You see, when individuals don't access justice, it means that the rule of law is not at play. So on a general note, the rule of law, it seeks to, whittle down arbitrariness, such that it is a rule of law that should hold sway, not the rule of men, not personal interest. The common good should be the order of the day. And that's why you talk about factors of the rule of law that has to do with, constraint on governments. You talk about absence of corruption. You talk about, civil justice, criminal justice. You talk about order and security. And then you talk about other aspect that has to do with what, things like, human rights. You're talking about constitutionalism and all of that. So when all of this comes into play, you say it is actually a state of affairs. Okay. Not just that you say a rule of law, this is a rule. No, but it's a state of affairs that is desirable, that holds sway within the polity, as it were.
Okay, I understand it's a very broad concept that brings about broad spectrum.
Yes.
But let's quickly look at the aspect of the judiciary, because if we must be successful in the practicability of the rule of law in Nigeria,
yes,
we can't take away the judiciary, because that is sacrosanct.
Yes.
The judiciary, what it comes with. It must ensure that we have the independence of the judiciary and its neutrality.
Yes.
Do you see any challenge in this regard that the judiciary is faced with in Nigeria?
You see, the argument of the is and the ought has always been there. What's the reality and what's supposed to be? When you are advocating for a state of affairs to hold sway, it means that there's a contrary state of affairs that may displace what is supposed to be in place. So it takes concerted efforts, from the constituents, from the community, from the citizenry, to have the kind of society they want to see in place. The judiciary is part of the society. So when you're talking of justices, judges, you're talking about, those who work as judicial staff and those who, see to the fact that everything that has to do with administration of justice is effected. They are human beings from the society too. And that is why in our education we talk about what? Being good in character and learning. Not just learning alone, because you could use your learning to destroy society
of course,
if your character is not in place. So when you bring in the ethical aspect that has to do with morals, that has to do with the neutrality and the independence of these people, it boils down to the state of your mind and how cultured and civilized you are. Okay, you have, the advantage or the privilege of being in an office. How do you manage it? Because if implementation is going to be, if we're going to find this state of affairs, wherein we can say within our society or our polity, the rule of law holds sway, it means that those who administer justice, those who are supposed to do the right thing to bring justice to bear, are actually doing it impartially, being neutral. And that's where interest comes in. Because if personal interest is allowed to override the public interest or the common interest of everybody, then it means that the rule of law has been undermined. And that's why people seem to distinguish between what? The rule of law and the rule by law. Where you just try to willy-nilly make out rules and procedures and other things that will make you have your way. Because you need to make somebody see that, okay, there is a rule or a law here. And meanwhile, it is not actually being seen to be done. Because justice must not only be done, it must be seen to be done.
Okay, but in Nigeria, do you see the operations of the political sphere, overwhelming that of the judiciary?
There is this pressure. You can't rule out the pressure because the politicians have an interest, and then the person who is sitting as a justice or a judge has an interest, and his interest basically is to do justice, and that is why it's supposed to be justice to whoever approaches the bench for justice, no matter whose ox is God. That is what is supposed to play out. So, but when you're talking about the pressure from the politicians, from those who are
from the executive, from the office of the president, for instance,
yes,
who appoints?
you have the NJC and all of that. All of these appointments, they are criteria for appointment of judges and justices, even magistrates and all of that. They are
subject to the approval of the president.
If there is subject to his approval, as it were. It's not that he will willy-nilly. He will still look at those criteria.
So in that case, can you say that the judiciary is independent?
It's independent.
It's not having the coloration of the executive.
No. It's independent on his own, because that, if not, we will not be having separation of powers. But when you talk about influence or maybe trying to pressure,
exactly where we are going.
It's always there. But that is where you come. So that is where you come in to stand as an incorruptible judge or an incorruptible justice who cannot be corrupted. Because when we talked about the factors relating to the rule of law, we mentioned what? Absence of corruption. So corruption can be anywhere, public or private. So this is what the law wants to gauge. Wants to keep in abeyance, so that it will not tinker with what is supposed to play out in society for the betterment of everybody.
You made mention of corruption, and this actually is a plague that has been
a serious monster.
Now, even from the streets, we have corruption cases, and it even nosedived into the judges. Now, how does the justice system tackle this aspect of corruption to make sure that it doesn't influence the balance of the rule of law?
When we say the rule of law, we are saying the law is above everybody. Both the judge, the president, the governors, and whoever is in a place of authority is not above the law. Once somebody is above the law, it becomes a rule of arbitrariness, the rule of men, that the rule of law is trying to curb. So the law not only needs to back, it needs to bite. Even against the judge, against the justice, whoever is found culpable. When we look at the international environment, within the international order of society, we know that you are not supposed to operate in isolation. There are international best practices. There are rules, of international engagements. There are rules, there are issues, or there are display of character or observations and practices that are frowned upon. And when these are frowned upon, and maybe you're a member of an international organization, even if you are not, you are definitely a member of the United Nations. And what it stands for is peace, human rights, and progress, development of society. And once the rule of law is undermined, it undermines all of the things that it stands for. It undermines health, it undermines peace, it undermines security, it undermines everything that we know society standing for, that will bring about what? Progress and development. So, in other words, there is a kind of peer review mechanism among nations, that when they are looking at you, they'll either be given a nod or a frown. At the time our president was asked a question outside the shores of the nation, whether Nigeria is fantastically corrupt. That is to show that some persons are also having a look into our society as to how it runs. So we cannot run in isolation, or maybe play the ostrich, hide our heads inside somewhere while our body is exposed, because everybody will be gazing at us and what we are doing. So to that extent, we need to also play with international best practices and what is obtainable as a standard for orderly and progressive society.
Okay, thank you. I must commend you for your articulation, but let's go deeper beyond playing with words.
All right.
Let's look at the aspect of the NJC.
Okay.
How does the NJC tackle the issue of corrupt judges? Because we know that there are bad eggs, in the lot. And how does the NJC, identify that in spite of the allegations that may be raised? And how does the system bring out this challenge?
Judges come to the bench
Tackle it,
from the bar.
Okay.
Okay, they are lawyers who have practiced and have been have been given the privilege to sit on the bench. So you have the Legal Practitioners Disciplinary Committee, and you have, when you talk about the NJC, that is why I said it is not just that these rules and what have you is there. It must be seen to be having effect. So when you err as a judge and you are brought to book, investigated and found culpable, you are brought to book.
Who investigates?
Who investigates?
Yes.
That is why they are there. If a committee is set up to investigate these judges, they will do their job. And the
NJC will set up a committee.
Yes.
Okay, not leaving it in the hands of the anti-graft agencies.
Even if it is, because there is what we call interdisciplinary approach. The DSS is doing their job, the police is doing their job, yes, SSS, and other sister agencies are doing their job, because don't forget that they are law enforcement, agency of government. They are part of the executive. The judiciary is independent, but it's what we call, like I told you about peer review, trying to, not a watertight, kind of arrangement where I cannot look into your affairs. You can look into mine, I can look into yours.
Of course, yes.
And that's why you have administrative, systems such as, certiorari, such as mandamus, even compelling you, the executive, to do your job by the executive when you bring it before them as a judiciary. I tell him, giving an order. So you, an executive, we know that this is your place to do this job. You go ahead and do it. Your abstaining from doing it is affecting society. And so to that extent, this person is bringing what? A matter before the court to say, okay, no, this is your place. This is your responsibility to so act. And since you are not acting, you are affecting others. And you must be compelled to do your job.
Okay.
So to that extent, we're saying that even if the judges are seated, to give justice, they are also part of society. So the justice they are dispensing, or the same parameters they are using to judge others, will be brought to bear on themselves if they are found wanting. We talked about Justice, Ajumogobia some time ago, and after investigation and all of that, they discovered that nothing is, fishy.
Nothing fishy.
Yeah,
okay, about that.
She was restored to the bench to continue with her job. So, but there was that interregnum to allow investigations and all the proper things to be done.
Okay.
So it shows you that there is also, an extent to which, the rule of law is finding even judges and justices, culpable, and then allowing them to be equal before the law, as it were.
Okay, in case you're just joining us, it's Law and You, and we're looking at the rule of law, which is a very broad concept, if you must agree with me on that. And I'm discussing with a custodian of the law in the person of Joseph Alego. Now, let's look at this aspect of the technicalities involved in the justice system. Now, we know it brings about the very, very essence to have a representation in court, and it's always saying that the judiciary is the last hope of the common man. And a case where the common man or the commoner, does not have the wherewithal, because if you talk about representation, in the court, it's not cheap, it's expensive, or is it?
Comparatively, relatively,
it's not
because
cheap.
sometimes citizens are
so
scared.
to those who don't have the wherewithal,
yes,
a segment of the masses that don't have the wherewithal, but that need to seek justice in that regard. How does the justice system capture this aspect of the society?
I want to first of all say citizens should not be afraid, or they should not carry this apprehension, that, it's costly to approach a lawyer. Approach one first of all. There are lawyers. For instance, I am the administrative secretary of PELIVA, Public Lawyer in Fellowship of West Africa.
Okay.
They are into public lawyering by, they take up public interest, matters that relates to the environment.
Without a fee? Or for a fee?
To a large extent.
Or relatively?
Yes. I would even say it's more or less like without a fee.
Okay.
Because the way we come in is an unconventional manner. We engage from engagement, we talk about negotiations and all of that. It is when all of those ones are not, sort of taking care of the issues that we talk about litigation.
How accessible is this body you're talking about?
Pelewa, it was just inaugurated, some 2 months ago or so here in Benin City. Okay. And so there are other chapters that are going to come up in Nigeria in different branches of the NBA. Okay. We'll have a desk at the Lion Bar.
Okay,
NBA
in different branches of the NBA.
Yes, we're starting here in Benin.
Okay, so I think the NBA is the umbrella body.
Yes.
Now it also look at cases where the masses or some commoners are not able to access justice, and then they come into that regard. So
yes,
it's not restricted to this body that you just made mention of.
No, not
so what are the other bodies within the NBA?
What I'm saying is that there is when you talk about public lawyering, public interest, those who do pro bono cases, assist indigent citizens and all of that, they're out there. But what I'm saying is that if you don't come around, nobody would know.
You will know.
Because justice does not lie on the side of the indolent.
And that's the essence of this program, to let them know.
It lies on the side of those who are pragmatic, who are serious about their issues and issues that bother on them. If you don't shout, your Jericho will not fall. So you need to err, you need to voice out.
So you need to approach.
Yes, approach lawyers.
Okay, so you go to the court. Is that what you mean?
No, not
you go. so how do they approach?
Okay, you have law offices. You have law offices all over the place.
Any chambers?
By our ethics.
Okay.
We are not permitted to advertise by our ethics.
Of course, yes.
So, but there are law chambers all over the place.
Okay.
And when you talk about the bar house, close to the High Court there, off Sapele Road, you can come around. What I'm saying is that when you approach them, these are my issues. This is what I'm going through. There is no how you will not find assistance.
Okay.
Even if the person you are approaching will not be able to assist you, there is a way he will do a referral towards somebody that will come to your aid. And when you look at the issue that is that serious and you have nothing, there is a way they will come in. If there is anybody that can support, can be of assistance, they will let you know. Instead of dying in silence or just keeping the courts and the lawyers at bay that come. These are serious men who are very costly. Somebody approached me some time ago and said, I never knew that lawyers can be that humble. I said, am I humble? Oh, sorry. I'm flattered. Thank you for that compliment anyway. So, but what I'm saying is that if he hadn't come, he wouldn't know that something like this can.
Would have still had this idea about
lawyers are
arrogant.
Yes, and all of that. So what I'm saying is that approach a lawyer, make one your friend, and at the end of the day, you'll be happy for it.
Are all lawyers good? Because if you say this, approach a lawyer, or you mean approach a good lawyer? Are all lawyers good? Don't they have rotten eggs amongst the lot?
There is no, lawyers are good. There is no profession that is free of bad eggs. But in as much as we have good lawyers all over the place, I cannot confidently vouch for everyone. Okay. But what I'm saying is that to the extent of professionalism, we have ethics that guide us. To the extent that even if a lawyer breaches an ethic or goes contrary to what he's supposed to do as per his profession, you have a right as a client to take it up. Just with the legal practitioner disciplinary committee that I told you about.
Yeah.
Is there. So you approach the bar house. Look at what I went through in the hands of this lawyer. And they will call him to book.
Okay.
And then they will know what is there.
A lot we would have loved to speak about, but let's see if we can exhaust some of them on this edition, and I believe that we're going to roll others into the next edition. Maybe we could be having 3 editions to dissect and analyze this stricto sensu, in total, as the case may be. But let's look at the aspect of justice delayed being tagged justice denied, because we have this supposedly or in seemingly inefficiency in governance, and it also exists in the justice system, doesn't it?
It is part of the factors that undermine the justice system. Because if you said, okay, a judge has been given a duty to dispense justice, and citizens are to have access to this justice system, and is already impartial, have you given him the necessary tool to work? As in technological advantages, as in, all that it needs to work, the necessary tool to do his job.
Okay.
Because when, we talk about maybe like in the general society, sorry to use, with the example of the educational sector, where a lecturer is brought in to do his job, and he's not given his necessary pay packet to do his job, then you are undermining him. there's a restraint on his effectiveness, on his efficiency.
So you are saying that this is part of what the Nigerian justice system is suffering
What
from?
I am saying is that you cannot so load a judge with multiple cases and you expect him to just become a magician or just raise the magic wand and then dispense all of them at a blow.
Okay, but do you have a challenge of manpower in the judiciary, for instance, in Nigeria?
I'm not a judge.
Like the table clerks, for instance.
I'm not a
justice. Because we have files that need to move from table to table, from one point to another. And this we find, filing of papers, we find it as a way of also delaying the process, being clogged in the wheel of progress.
Compared to the past, there have been a lot of reforms that have brought, fresh bread, a breath of fresh air, as it were, into the system. But more reforms, like an Oliver Twist, we're asking for more, that will make it more...
To improve the system.
Yes. But compared to the past, there have been great improvements. And improvements are still on the way, to make sure that the justice delivery system, deals with this issue of delay in dispensing of justice. Talking of special courts, small claims court. You're talking about using the alternative dispute resolution, the settlement houses and all of that. All those things are coming in to making sure that people have different channels, through which they can access justice. And also seeing that, okay, some of these bulky, file cases, mounting pressure on each other and all of that is reduced to a large extent. So when the courts are multiplied, the channels of accessing justice multiply, you discover that it will whittle down on the pressure.
All right, quickly, let's go into politics and its campaign period, election period. The big election here is now 2023. I heard you at the opening when you were saying Happy New Year and trying to give them the reason for having a new dispensation that we are working towards now. Let's look at the aspect where crime could be seen as being made to face retribution with a fine. Now we have a case, for instance, robbery cases, which mostly when they are being prosecuted, the convicts are mostly not given a fine, or are they?
All right. Capital
capital offenses. No, outside capital offenses.
Yes.
For robbery cases, they are mostly not given fines, but they are made to face the music. They are made to go for a jail term. Now, in vote buying, for instance, which is a big monster that we are challenging, this time around in 2023.
Yes.
In vote buying, we have the Electoral Act, which should be improved upon anyways, but came up with the fact that, with the provision that if a politician or anyone that is caught being convicted, will be made to face some year jail term or be given an option of 500,000 naira to pay. Now, do you see that as right? Does that apply? Or how does that apply to the rule of law?
You see, the court is not a Father Christmas. It deals with evidences presented before it. And so when we talk about our politicians, going their way to do some of these things that are contrary to the act or the provisions of the law, it behoves, for instance, they'll say, if you see something, say something. Because you are part of the system. You are part of the community. You are part of the citizenry. If anything goes wrong, if anybody undermines, the electoral process, then you have leaders that are not supposed to sit in power, come into power. Like one of our musicians sang about in the past, vagabonds in power. You have them in power because somebody who is supposed to be vigilant, who is supposed to be watchful over the electoral process to have, say something. So cash, evidences and even, help the law enforcement agents have some of these facts. Is not doing his own job, or is not giving support to the system, as it were. So if you're talking about the electoral system, the Electoral Act, when a law is reformed or promulgated or propounded or brought to bear in the system, it will be allowed to run.
To
see how it functions with this
society. To see how it functions, and
so
then there for reform,
improvement will be dealt with subsequently.
All right.
So that is how it works. You don't just allow, let's keep it there in the vault. We have not tested it. And two, if you see any breach, you also test it before the court to see how, the interpreters, because those who made the law, those who execute them are different from those who interpret. That's why we're talking about separation of power. The legislature have done their part in what bringing the law to bear. And then the executives are there to implement. While the judiciary is there to also do what? Interpret.
All right, big thanks for taking our time to be part of this great discussion. And we hope to extend this, like I said earlier, because it's a very huge concept. So
and make yourself
we must look at the second and third edition.
Law, and make sure that the rule of law finds bearing where you find yourself.
All right, this is much we can take for this edition. Don't forget that we'll roll in the next edition come next week. I'm Philip Omo Gupon. Goodbye.